You're listening to CFRN, a community of believers who trade for a living. To learn more about who we are, what we do, and how we do it, call toll-free 1-866-928-3310, and we'll send you out a no-obligation information kit absolutely free. 866-928-3310. The CFRN Emini Futures Cast is now on Stitcher. Listen to us on your iPhone, Android phones, BlackBerry, and WebOS phones. Stitcher is smart radio for your phone. Find it in your app store or at Stitcher.com. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio.
Are you ready, Steve? Andy? Yeah! Bert? Well, all right, fellas. Let's go!
You're listening to CFRN, the Christian Financial Radio Network.
Today's broadcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download at www.audibletrial.com/CFRN. Over 85,000 titles. Choose from mystery, romance, religion, science, technology, business, New York Times bestsellers, even children's books. You name it, Audible has it. With 85,000 titles to choose from, you're sure to find the perfect audiobook for yourself or to give as a gift, and it's absolutely free. Just point your browser to audibletrial.com/CFRN. That's audibletrial.com/CFRN. And become a part of the audiobook revolution by downloading your free audiobook today. audibletrial.com/CFRN.
Hey, trader, want to get rich quick? Well, good luck with that. If, on the other hand, you actually want to learn how to trade, the place to be is www.cfrn.net. Tune in Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern for our daily devotional, and then spend the next 3 hours learning how it's done from professional traders who actually trade for a living. That's www.cfrn.net. Every trading day from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. CFRN, a community of believers who trade for a living.
Good afternoon, traders, and welcome back to the CFRN Emini Futures Cast. This is the daily broadcast of Indeterminate Length, where we discuss all things Emini, along with some really big ideas on the finer points of trading gold, bonds, crude, sugar, the euro, and even T-bills. Joining us today from our studios in Boston, Mr. Michael Borth. From our trading desk in Chicago, Mr. Burton Schlichter. Now, to get things started, let's go to our host and founder in Studio A, overlooking South Mountain, America's largest city park. Here's Dwayne.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome back. Today is Wednesday, 7th day of June, 2017. Hope you're having a great Wednesday so far. As you know, it's hump day, so depending upon your time zone, you're approaching or you're over the hump and on the downward slide into the weekend. Everybody's working for the weekend, but I hope it's a great Wednesday wherever you are. Now, I have a chart up of the S&P 500 Emini Futures. If you would like to see the charts, participate in the discussion, have access to the chat box, two ways to do it. Go to our homepage at cfrn.net. On the right-hand side of the page, click the big microphone, follow the instructions. 30-second registration. You'll be good through the end of the month. The other option is to go to youtube.com/CFRN, and you're there. And there's a live chat box for you there as well. Let's take a look at the numbers around the world. We'll start with the cash markets here in the U.S. The Dow is up 14.5 points. The NASDAQ is up 14 points. S&P 500 is up almost a point. And the Russell 2000 is up almost 4 points. No movers, no shakers. We continue to have a pretty doggone quiet market. In the commodity basket, crude oil. Now, we had inventory numbers come out today. Down $2.09, trading 46.10 last. Gold down $5.60, trading 1291.90. In the European markets, the FTSE is down 46 points. That's a little over half of 1%. The DAX closed down 17.5 points, and the CAC closed down 3.5. So, color of the day in Europe, red. And in the Asian markets, we're mixed. The Nikkei closed up 4.5. Shanghai closed up 38. Now, for the Shanghai, that's an increase of a little over 1%. And the Hang Seng closed down 22 points on the day. So Asia mixed, Europe red. And so far, here in the US of A, we are green. Oil prices plunged 4% on the surprise 3.3 million barrel rise in U.S. crude stockpiles. And the euro dips significantly after reports that the ECB is going to cut the inflation outlook. Sure, you've heard that President Trump has chosen a former Department of Justice official, Christopher Wray, as his pick to lead the FBI. Trump tweeted this morning, "I'll be nominating Christopher A. Wray," that's W-R-A-Y, a man of impeccable credentials, to be the new director of the FBI. Details to follow. Wray is a former Assistant Attorney General who oversaw the Department of Justice's Criminal Division under President George W. Bush from 2003 to 2005. He is a partner of the law firm King and Spalding, and he was the lawyer for Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey during the Bridgegate trial. Wray's choice was viewed as a safe one for Trump amid a political firestorm over his firing of James Comey. Comey, who was overseeing the FBI's investigation into Russian meddling in the election, is set to testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee tomorrow. Senator Mark Warner, the leading Democrat on the committee, said Trump's announcement Wednesday was an effort to distract from our Senate hearings today and tomorrow. If confirmed, Wray will enter the job as Robert Mueller, a former FBI director, leads the investigation into the Trump campaign's ties to Russia. Oh, I hate to open up with that story, but it is the big story, and I know that everybody has to be so tired of hearing about this whole Russia thing. The surprising headline that I saw today: ISIS carried out their first attack in Iran. Suicide bombers and gunmen attacked the Iranian parliament and the mausoleum of Ayatollah Khomeini in Tehran today, killing at least 12 people in a twin assault, which Iran's Revolutionary Guard blamed on regional rival Saudi Arabia. Islamic State claimed responsibility and released a video purporting to show gunmen inside the parliament building. The attacks took place at a particularly charged time after Saudi Arabia and other Sunni powers cut ties with Qatar on Monday, accusing it of backing Tehran and militant groups. They were the first claimed by the hardline Sunni Muslim militant group inside in the tightly controlled Shiite Muslim community. Islamic State has regularly threatened Iran, one of the powers leading the fight against the militant forces in neighboring Iraq and beyond that, Syria. The powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps accused Saudi Arabia of being behind the action, a rare incident in Iran. This terrorist attack happened only a week after the meeting between the U.S. president and the Saudi backward leaders who support terrorists. The fact that Islamic State has claimed responsibility proves that they were involved in the brutal attack. The Saudi foreign minister, speaking in Berlin, said he did not know who was responsible and there was no evidence that Saudi extremists were involved. Attackers dressed as women burst through Parliament's main entrance in central Tehran. Deputy Interior Minister Mohammed Hossein Zalfagari said one of them detonated a suicide vest in the Parliament. About 5 hours after the first reports, Iranian media said 4 people who had attacked Parliament were dead and the incident was over. They did manage to kill at least 12 people. These are troubled times, folks. Pray. Pray for our country. Pray for our government. Pray for the world. There's no better time for a Christian to be on their knees than right now. This jihadist, terrorist movement that's sweeping the world. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. So these are difficult times. So whether you voted for Trump or not, pray for him that he makes the right decisions for the American people and for the people of the world. With that, we'll go to Michael and get a recap of everything that happened today in the live training room. If you're ready, Michael.
I am ready. I am ready. I'm pulling everything over here.
Another quiet day, huh?
Yeah. I was afraid it was going to be that way. When I saw we had no news. Really, just the crude inventories. But it was a green day anyway.
All right, let me hit mute and you can roll them.
Okay. All right. Here we go. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 7th day of June, 2017. Today, well, first, if you have not taken a free trial with us, we've made it really easy to do so now. All you have to do is go here to the home page at CFRN.net, and right here, this green banner is going to drop down. Just click there. You just have to fill in these 2 forms. Put in your email and your first name, and click Submit. Once you do that, you'll be sent a confirmation link. You must click on the confirmation link. Okay, if you don't click the confirmation link, you will not get the free trial. Okay, you gotta click that link. Alright? Alright. Oops. Now, spreadsheet. Again, if you're gonna read the spreadsheet, you gotta read all the CFTC risk disclosures down at the bottom. Today, we had 20 ticks on the euro. We lost 8 on crude. We made 8 on gold. That gave us 125. 125 total. Today it took 104 minutes and 11 opportunities to get to the goal for the day. At that point, we were up $100 a contract, and so we took a total of 12 today. All right. So now on the month, we're at 505.50. That's over 5 days, averaging 101 per day gross. Okay. Now down here, on the year now, we're at 16,642. That's over 106 days, averaging 157 per day so far. What was our average last year? At the end of the year, 219 per day was our average at the end of the year last year. Yeah, there was a lot more volatility last year than there has been this year. Okay, anyway. There. All right. we'll go through everything that we did or didn't do in the room today. All right, so gold started out right here. It had a long trade right there that we missed. Then we had one right here we got a break even on. And we had one right here we got 4 ticks on. And one over here we got 4 more ticks on. Okay, that was all we did in gold during the room. Now, I was thinking at 11:30 that things might loosen up a little bit. They kind of did. There was a shorting opportunity right here for a few more ticks, but it didn't put in a lower swing until way over here. Okay, and then once it finally did put in the lower swing, it was like this. Okay, and that was it. There really wasn't anything major to go on there in the gold. Okay, the euro. Now, we started out with the euro right here. We had minus 8 right there. We stopped out on it. Then we picked up 10 ticks right there, putting us at +2. Then in this leg down right here, we got 2 there to put us at 4, 2 there to put us at 6, 4 there to put us at 10, 6 there to put us at 16, and 4 there to put us at 20. Okay, and that was where we ended the day on the euro. Was there more opportunity? Not really. Might have been one short right here for a few more ticks, and that was about it. Right now, it's got a bounce off the BBC right here for a long trade off the BBC. Okay, and that was it on the euro today. Now, crude. We had the crude inventories come out, and I was expecting price to get, well, actually to get way up here. Because yesterday, if you look at a 15-minute chart, this is where price was yesterday when the API numbers came out. The API numbers were better than expected. And so price dropped. And then, right here, price really tanked. When the inventory numbers came out, I had figured that it was going to drop a little bit and then it was going to react and get back up to where it was yesterday where the API numbers came out. But the numbers were so far off. You know, they were expecting a draw of 3.3 million, I think. They got a build of 3 million. The numbers were just totally off. And it did not act the way that it normally does. Oops. So, anyway, let's just go back and show you what we did. We just had that one stop out right there on the crude. Right there. We went long and we stopped out. -8 ticks. Now let's see. Right in here was a momentum long trade, but I wanted to see it trade up out of this zone that it was in here, this range. I wanted to see it trade out of this range because the crude was just whipping around after that crude inventory number came out. And you can see it never got out of that range. Okay. So we had just that one stop out. And on the YM, we had just one break even right there. Okay, now the ES has been back and forth, to these zones right here. This morning it started out right about here, and just 2 points away from the zone. Then it went up into the zone and got stuck there for about half hour. Then it dropped right down to this zone and got stuck there for another half hour. And right now, being so close to the zones like this is going to make it difficult to trade any of the indexes this week. It's got to get out of these zones. Got to break out below this one, or where there's some room to run right here. That's what I'd be looking for on the ES. Okay, well that's all of that stuff. So let's go back here again with the spreadsheet. If you're going to read it, you're going to read all the CFTC risk disclosure stuff down at the bottom. Today is the 7th day of June. 20 ticks on the euro. Lost 8 on crude. Made 8 on gold. 125 total. And today 104 minutes and 11 to get to the goal for the day. And a total on the day of 12 opportunities taken. So on the month now we're at 507.50. That's over 5 days, averaging 105 per day. On the year, We're at 16,642. That's over 106 days, averaging 157 per day. Okay. And if you have not taken a free trial with us, just go to the home page here, right up here at the very top. To sign up for the free trial, you just click here. Just click there. Put in these two boxes, and you'll get a confirmation link. You must click on that confirmation link. Okay, if you don't click the confirmation link, you will not get your free trial. Okay, you gotta make sure you click that link. All right. And with that, Dwayne, you will have to pull it back out to where did I put it? That was on the back of this. To America's largest city park in fabulous Phoenix, Arizona.
Alrighty, I will do that.
Okay. I knew I wrote it down somewhere.
Okay, one more step. And there we go.
Excellent.
So the recap of the recap.
Today it took 104 minutes and 11 trades to get to $100 per contract.
One more time.
104 minutes, 11 trades,
Mm-hmm.
and $100 per contract.
Good job.
All right, thank you.
All right, guys, let's dive into a couple more headlines here. And, of course, coming up at top of the hour, Wayne Jett will join us. And John will be joining us here shortly. Uber has fired more than 20 employees after receiving 215 claims in a probe of sexual harassment and other incidents. The internal investigation is separate to the review being carried out by former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder. Uber can't stay out of the news. Pinterest is now valued at $12 billion after raising another $150 million in funding. The funding comes from existing investors, and it's based on the company's share price from 2 years ago. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with Pinterest, that's another one that, got by me. I didn't know how and why people would find it so interesting, but they found it Pinteresting, I guess. Apple executive Bazoma St. John is joining Uber as its chief brand officer. St. John was previously the head of consumer marketing for Apple Music. Tesla is trading at all-time highs. The company's stock price broke $354 and set an all-time record for the company. And it's really interesting that Elon Musk on a number of occasions has said that he thought his own stock was a little overpriced and that people should take caution that the price goes higher. Amazon is going after Walmart with cheaper prime rates for some shoppers. The company announced on Tuesday it's going to offer reduced prime rates for American shoppers who are on government assistance. Now, 50 million Americans are on food stamps right now. So Amazon is targeting a very large demographic, and that's gotta chap Walmart's hide as it eats into their profits. The first episode of Apple's new show, Planet of the Apps, is now available to view. It features expert judges including will.i.am and Jessica Alba. We found out what it's like to be a parent in the gig economy. Couriers find it difficult to balance the demands of being a parent with the need to get out on the streets and earn money. We'll look under the hood on this one. Alex Marshall was excited and anxious. The 32-year-old Londoner was preparing for not one but two consequential events: a major legal action against his place of work and the birth of his first child. It was the baby's due date, and there was a risk that his partner could go into labor at any minute. If suddenly there's some screams in the background, you'll know what's happening, he joked in an interview. Alex has been a push-bike courier for 5.5 years. For the last 2.5 of those, he has worked for the doctor's laboratory, TDL, darting in and out of London's hospitals and weaving through the city streets on his bicycle to deliver medical samples. Although he works exclusively for TDL, 9 to 6, 5 days a week, he's not an employee. He's classified as an independent contractor and is technically free to take time off whenever he likes, though he has to give notice. He doesn't get the benefits most people take for granted, like sick pay and holidays. This job, which gives him flexibility at the expense of job security and traditional benefits, places him in the gig economy. If you're not familiar with that term, the gig economy is a nebulous, buzzwordy concept. It refers to a growing number of people who work on a job-by-job basis, self-employed without any formal boss. Depending on your definition, it can mean anyone from professional developers working on a freelance basis to the itinerant workforce of on-demand service firms like Deliveroo and Uber. But beyond the rhetoric of self-empowerment, these two extremes have little in common. Workers in this on-demand industry at very different stages of parenthood say it's difficult to understand what it can be like to raise a family in modern Britain's gig economy. From flexibility and deeply satisfying work through to 70-hour weeks and terrified days spent by hospital beds, these are the people who drive your cars, deliver your parcels. They satisfy modern Britain's addiction to convenience. And these often anonymous workers are finally in the spotlight with a series of legal battles against major gig economy firms and a growing labor rights movement. Now, Alex technically is self-employed, an independent contractor, but he's under no illusions. I work for TDL. You know, there's no doubt about that. If you talk to anyone, mates at the pub, and they say, "Who do you work for?" as if any of you turn around and say, "I'm actually a self-employed contractor who lends my services to TDL." He and other couriers working for TDL are taking the organization to a labor tribunal, arguing they should be reclassified as employees. I work for TDL from 9 to 6, 5 days a week, in the rain and the snow and the high winds. In all of those conditions, we're out there breaking our backs for this company. There's no ifs and buts about who we work for. In the run-up to the legal fight, Alex was also occupied with something else, preparing for the arrival of his first child. He said he was anxious about the optics of taking a full 2 weeks off to get to know the newest member of his family. One coworker told him their child was born on a Wednesday, and they were working again by the next Monday. Another took only 2 days off. Having heard that my sort of 10-day holiday, I felt a bit more like, this is a bit, not so good. His employment status means that every day he's with his baby is a day that he's not on the roads earning money for his family. There's no statutory paternity leave for men, no holiday time, and no sick days. Baby comes when the baby comes, but for me, I've still got this little thing at the back of my head saying, it'd be nice if the baby came on this day because then it wouldn't infringe on my work days, but the baby comes when the baby comes. So the gig economy, really big in Britain and becoming bigger here in America, although, as we've discussed, a lot of the companies that depend upon the independent contractors who constitute the gig economy seem to not be making it. So in that regards, Britain seems to be more than a little different from us. Delivery Hero, another gig economy employer, is preparing to hold an IPO in the coming months. Rocket Internet's food delivery giant has over 6,000 employees. Bitcoin hit a new high yesterday. It's up 6% at $2,848 a coin. I'll say that again. As of yesterday, Bitcoin was at $2,848 a coin. And last, Google can now detect which roads are most polluted using Street View cars. For the past year, Google has used 2 Street View cars to track and store data about air pollution levels block by block in Oakland, California. So now we know what are they going to do with this information? They don't tell us that. Okay, let's go to our good word for the day. And maybe John will get dialed in here in a moment. Change your thinking, change your life. You've heard me say that before. Romans 12:2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That is Romans 12:2. Sometimes we try to excuse our negativity by saying, yeah, it was just a thought. Yeah, it didn't mean anything. But it does. A wrong thought left to roam around in your mind can take root and grow into what the Bible calls a stronghold. See Corinthians 10:4 for more on that. And when a thought becomes that strong, it begins to control your outlook, your attitude, and your actions. That's why the Bible says, be transformed or changed by the renewal of your mind, by its new ideals and its new attitude. Remember, where the mind goes, the man follows. We all face challenges and difficulties in life. You might allow yourself to think thoughts such as, I just can't take anymore. Or if one more thing happens, I'm going to go over the edge. Or perhaps, if things don't change soon, I'm just going to give up. That kind of thinking prepares you to be defeated before you even encounter the problem. There is nothing strong, powerful, enabling, or victorious in thinking you will go over the edge or in deciding to quit. Those are losing attitudes, not winning attitudes. Instead, you should think, renew your mind. If the attack is this great, then the blessing that lies beyond it is greater. Or, if Satan is attacking me this hard, God must have something good in store for me. Become a person who is spiritually, emotionally, and mentally prepared for any challenge that crosses your path. And don't allow yourself to be easily discouraged or defeated. And you do that by the renewing of your mind with God's Word and prayer. When the negative thoughts come, you must, as Paul wrote, take them captive and cast them down. Because thoughts become actions, and our actions become our tomorrow. So be careful what you think. Because when you change your thinking, you change your life for better or for worse. So let's make it better. That's our good word for the day. Okay, we will move on to our Concierge Trade Alerts as we wait for John. The Comey testimony starts tomorrow. That's going to be quite a big deal, I suppose. Let me get to last night's alerts. Now the S&P, I mean, it can't come unglued from last week's zone, 2429/2430. I mean, if we scroll back to, this was the Sunday night Globex Open, and then this took us into Monday, Tuesday, now today. I mean, there's been a little movement back and forth, but, gee. There's so much uncertainty in the world. At this flat S&P top, which is the bellwether for the markets, being at all-time highs, buyers are afraid to buy, sellers are afraid to sell. And so, you know, the computers just keep pinging it back and forth, back and forth. What will it take to break us one way or the other? I don't have that answer. Truly don't. Last night, the alerts got out at 7 p.m. Eastern. So that's 1900 hours, 2 days in a row. Okay. I always try to get them, I try to get them out by at least 9 p.m. Eastern. But some days, they do better. Depends on life. Life happens. On the S&P 500, we were looking to be buyers at 2436. We were just being hopeful, I guess. And sellers at 2424. So the market did not move enough to give us a trigger. Hey, John, welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thanks very much. Welcome to everybody. You know, there's been a couple of interesting things happen in the last few days. Today, believe it or not, day 138 of the Trump presidency, he's actually overtaken Bill Clinton as to where Bill Clinton was. Same place all those years ago.
Overtaken in what regard?
In popularity.
Oh, okay.
Percent, you know, yeah. And as I said quite emphatically some weeks ago or some while ago on this show, that I'd rather see somebody start off weak in a presidency. You know, presidents that start off strong tend to go down, and presidents that start off weak tend to go higher. And Bill Clinton actually is a pretty interesting example of that. He might be the poster boy because he had an early stumble. You know, he had a double stumble early on in his presidency, and ended up, you know, at one point he peaked around a 72% popularity. So I would hope the same
amazing.
fate.
It really is.
Yeah, I would hope a similar fate awaits Trump in time, and I think that could definitely happen. You know, I think he's starting to win. You know, in spite of his idiosyncrasies and antics, he's starting to win more people over all the time. I mean, he's actually gaining more followers on Twitter. It's kind of accelerating the number of people joining Twitter, especially that overseas trip. You know, he added a few million people over the last month or so, which is a pretty big deal, really. He's adding not quite 100,000 a day, but he's adding a lot of people every day. So more and more people are coming over to Trump bit by bit. And I can tell you, look, right now, as a matter of fact, he's runner-up to JFK in terms of the Dow performance, but in terms of NASDAQ and semiconductors and things like that, Facebook and these mega stocks, the FANGs, he's way ahead of any other president ever. I mean, he's actually ahead of JFK. So technically, he is the number one performing president of all time so far to date. And he is absolutely the number one performing president in terms of net worth creation. There's no president has ever increased the national value by 3.5 trillion in less than 8 months, and the global wealth of 9 trillion in the same period. It's never happened before. And that's the real vote of confidence in Trump. That makes him number one by, forget about these polls. There are a lot of nonsense, most of them. This is the real poll. This is the real poll. And because people are voting with their money. And right now, up until, yesterday, we put in an all-time high on the NASDAQ. We actually had a sell up around the 5880 area, and that has held. And we're turning down again. There is a possibility of a bit of a stumble here in the next few days. I thought we might go this morning. It kind of looked like we might break out, but so far the market's kind of hobbled. However, a couple of our top performing stocks, I can't believe I'm actually telling you this, but we were long the blue going into yesterday. We sold it at 104, shorted it at 104, came down to 97, and we put a buy on 97. We're back to 100, and we just sold it at 105 a short while ago, and it's coming down now. And Nvidia 149, and it's Nvidia might still go a bit higher. It still could break out higher, but I think the blue is coming off here. We also went long Mylan Laboratories today. It's quite a big performer. And we long AGIO, which is another favorite stock from the past. It ran up quite a bit since yesterday. We sold it up around 50, and it's coming off right now. So people will be able to get these alerts soon. I'm still sort of doing a kind of a beta testing on them, but as you can tell, it's working very well. We also were long the LABU. We've been selling it up around the 50 area. It's coming off again. So, and we're long now the LABD. We're long the UVXY, and we're long the VXX. We're long copper, actually, from about the 252 level. And we're long the Newmont mining and the gold stocks in general. Although we might exit here, they're a little bit wobbly at the moment, and the gold is turning down a bit. So it's sort of, look, the problem is when you get up to 1295 or 1298 and you don't go through 1300, it does tend to back off a bit. But what we're seeing here today, after an early pullback in the Nugget and the JNUG, we're seeing a bit of a rebound. So I think the JNUG and the Nugget are probably positioning for another possible move upward. But it's a little risky around here. The dust was a good trade this morning. If you were nimble enough, could have scalped almost $3 out of the dust. Or sorry, not $3, about a buck actually. $3 out of the J dust. So that's kind of the state of play. The other thing that's a bit of a shocker today is the oil, which we've been short for a couple, since Sunday night, actually, since that short I told you about. We went, after buying it early Sunday, we went short, around midnight or sometime around then, and caught this downdraft, which is really becoming quite an accelerated decline now. There was 3 or 4 million barrels of excess inventory reported this morning, and we've just broken 46 on the crude. We actually scalped a little bit of a rally a short while ago for not much, about 20 cents or so, and went short again. And right now, it doesn't look like there's much of a reversal anywhere in the offing. They're all looking. Look, it might bounce a little bit from here, but I don't see any dramatic turnaround unless the Saudis come out and say something positive. With that in mind, as we always do, I would put a buy stop or a cover and reverse stop in around maybe 46.10, possibly even at 46 here, just in case, because sometimes you can be surprised by something coming out of the blue. Remember I said about the grains, that you've got to be long the grains. I said that a few days ago. Grains have taken off, and it looks to me like this is it. This is the real deal. We're on our way now, and I think you have to be long the grains because the possibility of a really big move in grains is in the offing this year, and I think it's really starting to shape up very, very well right here. Probably take a shot at cotton too. I'd probably put a buy stop on cotton, maybe around 75.90 or $76, just in case, because cotton and grains tend to go up together. And the cotton did go limit up for the first time in a long time, about a month ago, a few weeks ago. It's pulled back a little bit, and now it's probably ready to be bought again. So I would definitely consider doing that. The rest of the market, no, it's really starting to turn down here. Wow. I'd be short right now. I'd definitely be short, and I'd be long the VIXs right now. This could be, this thing could shake out a little bit more than expected. And we did say yesterday, there might be a bit of a nervousness out of this testimony tomorrow. Not that there's anything particularly big about it, I don't think, but you never know.
Well, I mean, no one's presented any real evidence, and why he pled the fifth, I guess that's maybe the big question.
Who pled the fifth?
At some point when Comey was being questioned, he pled the fifth.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. No, listen, this guy, forget about him. No, Jesus, somebody's already selling T-shirts with a picture of him and nut job. So, I mean, they should be selling the Democrats T-shirts like that, because these guys are the charts. I mean, they're beyond all reason. I mean, they're absolutely, they're in the left field. I mean, you can't even imagine. And they keep hounding on this morning in these testimonies, trying to catch people out and everything. It's just sickening. It's absolutely insane. It's insane. So
have you seen this documentary or heard them talk about it on maybe Fox News, The Jihadi Next Door?
Yeah, no. This is the left wing Brits. BBC is as left wing as it gets, and these sort of people kowtowing to the jihadis and making a program about it. I mean, how insane can you get? And CNN did the same thing with some really obnoxious jihadi that had actually been out there fighting and may have even chopped some people's heads off. I mean, I'm shocked that he hasn't been beaten to death somewhere in the streets of Belgium by now, because I mean, there's no mercy for these people. They're so. Do you see the reports of people coming out from Mosul after they've been rescued and came out of the living hell that these people have put upon them in the last few years? I mean, it's absolutely inhuman. And honestly, there's only one way to go after these, and they got to totally. I know it's a very difficult job, but I mean, look. At the end of the day, these poor people. There's people being killed every day. Look. It is. I guarantee you. I mean, look. If Obama had nipped this in the bud back in 2012, instead of not believing the intelligence he was being given every day, and just whistling past the graveyard, and allowing this horrible, the worst nightmare of humanity in our lifetime to emerge and become what it has become, killing people every single day, in these poor people in Britain, in London, and Australians and French and Russians even, who got injured or killed on the bridge. Same thing in Manchester. I mean, it is all Obama's fault, and that's what Trump should be pushing really, relentlessly, because at the end of the day, it was Hillary's fault and Obama's fault. They didn't nip this in the bud when they should have, and they allowed it to fester. And now it's 10 times, 100 times harder to squash this thing than it might have been, just a few years ago. And there's this insane ideology, and so they've got to go after the internet, and they've got to take all this poison off the media, because it's just rotten to the core. It's horrible. It's the biggest scourge of our lifetime, this thing. I mean, it is a really, really, really bad deal. And what Trump did in going to Saudi Arabia and getting to the heart of it, it was an incredibly astute thing and a totally brilliant idea to get to the heart of it right away and try and end this nightmare. And that's the only way to do it. You've got to go to the people where it's emanating from.
Right.
And they're on our side. So, I mean, they couldn't have been more supportive.
Well, this one guy that was highlighted in the Jihadi Next Door documentary was reported to be one of the guys involved in this attack over the weekend on the London Bridge. And this whole group that was highlighted in this documentary, they're all on government assistance in Britain. So they're living
exactly.
off the government. And
the same with this fella in Belgium. When they did this documentary on him, he was going to pick up his check from the Belgian government. I mean, can you believe it? It's insane. And this is just a terrible scourge on humanity. It's just awful.
Well, this attack in Iran by ISIS this morning, that was a little bit of a surprise to me.
Well, people have a habit of shooting themselves in the foot, and that was probably a big mistake by these guys. I mean, listen, they can't stand the Shiites, so I think the problem with what I was going to say is the problem with the Wahhabism in Saudi Arabia and the Sunni angle is that they inadvertently sort of created a monster without realizing it. That's the problem, with these fanatical extremists and this ideology, and because of the wars that have been going on in the Middle East, these endless wars, they keep blaming. I mean, for God's sake, if Trump wasn't on their side, firing in 59 Tomahawk missiles because of the way these people were gassed mercilessly, I mean, doesn't he get any respect for that? I mean, it's just crazy. He should have listened. He should have hit the palace that night instead of just pinpricking an airport. He should have hit him hard right where it hurts, because that would have sent a 100 times bigger message to the world than what he sent. It's regrettable that he didn't do that, because it would have probably ended the problem much quicker. But because it's an almost impossible mess to solve right now. It's going to be very difficult to fix this problem. Unless they maybe divide the country up into 3 different provinces or something, or 3 different new countries. It's really going to be a bit of an issue. Notwithstanding what I just said about the market selling off, look, it's the same old story. You get these sort of vicious sell-offs where it looks like the market's going to tank, and then it gets a little bit of buying support, which it's getting right now. So, I might even be covering here, and I certainly would put a stop on the VIXs, because this is what happens is, the market might be just selling off a little bit to get the energy to go back up, possibly tomorrow, because if this testimony goes well tomorrow, there could be a pretty big rally afterwards. It could be a kind of a sigh of relief type rally.
Right.
And I actually think somehow in the next few days, maybe some of the stuff that Trump is doing, something could come out, whether it's the Fed or something else. But I think within the window of the next week, we're going to see some kind of, even possibly within hours, we're going to see another dip, and then we're going to start going higher again in these markets. So that's what makes it so hard to trade these markets right now. Is you have to have the courage to go in and buy when it's looking, like it could fall over. Just like today, this is a typical pattern that's been going on quite frequently now, where you get these sell-offs and then the market stabilizes and tends to rally into the afternoon. And then next thing you know, it's up in the night, and next morning it opens higher, and it's hard to catch again. So that's kind of the way it's happening. But another thing is the copper is possibly about to break out to the upside, and if the copper runs big in the next few months, that could actually be quite bullish for the market. And the metals are turning down a bit here, so we were right about selling off getting out of the gold stocks temporarily, and just because right now I don't think the gold is going to go anywhere today, but it might have a late rally, before the day's out. So I'd be trying to get back on that if that happens.
Okay. All right, John. Wayne,
there was something else.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is Wayne there?
I don't know. He usually pops in right on time, so I don't know if he had a headset issue.
Oh yeah, there's a chart. I'll probably I'll send you this chart. This is a shocking chart. U.S. manufacturing share of all U.S. jobs has fallen from nearly 40% at the peak of World War II down to less than 10%, and it just keeps going down. That's a staggering looking chart. There's another thing. There was an article about UK soccer players abandoning the pound demand payment in euros. Remember when we put that big long-term buy signal out on the pound?
Right. At
about 23 or 24.
Yeah.
And look at where it is today. It's up at 129.70. It reminds me of the Arabs when the euro was at 160. They all wanted to be paid in euros instead of dollars. Turns out that would have been a bad idea. So I think when the UK soccer players are abandoning the pound, it's a pretty good buy signal for the pound, because these guys are usually wrong. People like that are usually wrong. So I just thought I'd mention that. Also, by the way, in the last, following the publication we put out on May the 24th, calling for a mega rally in gold, on June the 1st came out the article that the hedge funds are piling into gold more than at any time since 2007. And somebody else is saying that the 6-year bear market in gold is over. And I would totally agree with that, because it is actually breaking out of the downtrend that started in 2011. And so we not only have a potential breakout of the downtrend, but we also have the golden cross buy signal, which is really, given that we've gone up this much, I wouldn't say it's 100% certainty. You can 100% confirmed, but it's certainly 90-something% confirmed now, this golden cross buy signal. And generally speaking, the golden cross buy signal usually means at least 2 or 3 years of upside, and generally is multiples higher in gold. And I sincerely believe that we are going to see gold in the at least in the several $1,000 range by 2020, and possibly in the high 10, upwards of sort of 8 to 10,000 by 2023. The way we're going, it just looks almost inevitable. There's too many the planets are too well lined up for gold for that not to happen. It's just going to happen. It's just
How hard is it going to be to crack 13, do you think?
Sorry?
1,300, how hard do you think it's going to be to crack it?
You know what? It's going to be like a knife through butter, in my view. When it goes, it's going to go pretty rapid. It's going to go very fast. And you'll be at 1308 to 1310 almost immediately, and I wouldn't be surprised if we go up to 13 and a quarter very quickly. Very quickly. Given the way this market's been going in the last few days, it's a pretty powerful market. And I expect it to go through 1300 just very incredibly fast, actually. Now, it may take some time to get through it, but
right.
You know, it
hangs.
The more it hangs around, the more it hangs around in the 90s, here, the better it is. Now, there is a tendency sometimes for them, and it didn't do it the last time, but there is a tendency for the market to test sometimes the 1275 and then go back up to 1290s. I wouldn't rule that out, but it doesn't look very likely at the moment that that's going to happen. It just seems there's too much support here for the metals. You know, it's kind of getting bought on any pullback. And the other thing is the gold stocks themselves, the blue chip gold stocks like Royal Gold and GOLD. I mean, these stocks are 20% from their all-time highs right now, literally. They're not that far away from all-time highs. And some of these stocks are kind of royalty-type stocks, so, you know, every dollar higher, every dollar increase in the price of gold from this point forward is basically pure profit for these gold miners because they've got a fixed cost. And if their cost of production is $1,100 or $1,000 or something like that, you know, right up here at 1,300, all of a sudden they're getting really profitable.
Right.
And if we start going to 14 or 1,500, I mean, these stocks are going to go dramatically higher. And if the stocks go dramatically higher, they're going to pull the price of gold up with it. It's going to become a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, you know. And getting silver into the 20s will be a huge deal. You know, if we get in silver in the mid-20s, that's going to be incredibly profitable for a lot of silver miners.
Well, the thing I read was that, you know, silver will be the next to make the big move.
Yeah, no, it definitely looks that way. And look, a lot of the things that Jason. It's interesting because, see, when the market goes into a bull market, the reason why, remember I said, you know, a few weeks ago, when the gold wasn't performing and the silver was leading the way higher, this is what happens in the early stage of a bull market because the traders are putting on the silver-gold spread. So they're buying silver and shorting gold. Now you might say, well, why don't they just buy them both? Well, you know, I don't know why they do that, but they just do it. So I would buy them both. That's what we do every day. But nevertheless, the silver will accelerate higher. And the next time when silver breaks $50 next time around, it's probably going to go a lot higher. It might go to 100, might even go to 150 because of the reasons that Jason Hummel mentioned recently, and also who was on yesterday, same thing. You know, there is a finite amount of silver in the world, and when activity and demand gets to a certain point, it becomes more accentuated in the silver. So the silver, look, there's a lot of reasons why the silver goes up. You know, you've got guys all over the country who are selling silver, you know, whether they're recycling silver and selling it, selling gold bars and silver guys. And the people in the coin business, like, you know, your friend who's been on, Swiss America and so, these guys, you know, because they, just like any business, they know when the demand is strong and when it's not. And when the demand gets strong, you know, the silver guys tend to imply to the customers that there's a shortage of silver, and they're not too keen. They don't like selling the inventory. If you knew for sure that silver is going to go to $18 tomorrow morning, would you wait a few days before you sold it to somebody? You know, if you can, obviously. and so is when you get a really strong bull market, all of these dealers all over the country multiplied by tens of thousands are all thinking the same thing, and they're sort of automatically creating a tightness in the market that causes prices to go higher. And the same thing happens and then you've got people like the Hunt brothers come in and start trying to corner the market, or maybe J.P. Morgan. At some point, J.P. Morgan is going to be the elephant in the room, and when they decide it's time to push silver, they're going to be the biggest pushers of silver.
J.P. Morgan, now they're rumored to have the incredibly large naked short position.
Well, they've got a huge base position. They've got a massive silver. They might be the biggest silver owner in the world, but they play a lot against it. They short against it and things like that. That's the problem. And that's probably the problem with a lot of these bullion dealers. Everybody's out there to try and hedge their risk. So that's one of the reasons why the market is as difficult to trade as it is. But when you start getting a sustained upward trend in the markets, which looks, while it's not necessarily inevitable, the probabilities of that happening in the next few years have certainly gone up dramatically, because people are getting richer in the world. There's more, as I said, there's more Chinese millionaires today than ever. They love gold. The same with the Indians. The Indians, the gold is becoming a currency in India because of the problems with the regular currency. Russia has been buying unbelievable amounts of gold. And so there's that factor. And then there's mine production is going down, or is going to go down in the future.
Hello. Hey, Wayne. Is that you?
Hello?
Yeah, you sound a little far away.
It is. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. I can hear you.
Well, I am happy to join you. I just got an email from...
I'm able to hear you good now.
All right, great. Happy to hear it. I had tested my mic a little earlier before coming on, and it seemed to be fine. In any event, I had a question for John. I don't know, I've been listening to you for 10 minutes or so, and I don't know whether you've spoken before about the recent ruling in the last week or so about the CFTC settling a case with a manipulator of the futures markets in silver and gold.
You mean Deutsche Bank?
No, this is a small individual guy.
No, I didn't hear about that.
His name is David Liu. And the CFTC announced the settlement of a case against him, and ordered that he be barred permanently from any further manipulation or participation in the markets relating to silver and gold or other commodities, I think. This was a, let's see, looking at the date of it, his name is David Liu, L-I-E-W. CFTC finds former trader David Liu engaged in spoofing and manipulation of the gold and silver futures markets and permanently bans him from trading and other activities in CFTC regulated markets. Now, I saw this reported, I believe it was by Bix Weir over the weekend, and he indicated his view is that this is the approach the CFTC uses to supposedly indicate that it's going to start punishing those who engage in this kind of spoofing and manipulation.
What exactly was he doing?
Well, spoofing is basically putting out trades and then or bids and then offering them back or pulling them back.
Right, with no intention of ever getting filled, but just to create a false demand or supply. either way.
Right, and an attempt to make it appear that there's movement in the market when there isn't, or demand when there isn't.
Right.
An approach to moving the price. And so the question is, I was wondering if you knew about this and indications that this would mean a different attitude or point of view or enforcement posture by the CFTC in regard to the bigger manipulators, whether JP Morgan or someone else, Deutsche Bank.
Well, you mentioned Deutsche Bank, John. What did they get caught up in? Is this something recent?
Well,
I think he had to answer. I think he had to answer that call. Go ahead. Yes.
Well, Deutsche Bank, of course, some months ago, officially in a pending litigation lawsuit, admitted that it had been engaging in conspiracy with other major banks to manipulate the price of silver and gold. So Deutsche Bank is on the record in litigation and legally committed to the admission that there has been a conspiracy among the major banks to manipulate and control and, in my estimation, hold down the price of gold and silver. The related question about that is, are those banks doing it with the tacit not only approval but actually request of the U.S. government or the powers behind the U.S. government so that it can make the dollar appear to be a more stable currency in its value than it actually is. So the question is, jumping on a little manipulator, one who basically is riding the backs of the big manipulators, is this really a change in the U.S. government position and giving a heads up to the major manipulators to stop doing it?
This is the first I heard of this, but I'm looking now and I see the headlines that came out the other day. I'm surprised I missed them. I think this fellow was located in Singapore, correct?
I didn't pick up his location.
It says here, CFTC bans Singapore trader for future spoofing. Issued an order filing and settling charges against David Liu, Liew, for spoofing, attempted manipulation in the gold and silver markets. And
this was June 1st.
Right.
That it occurred, so that would have been, I guess, last Thursday. In any event, it seems to me that would have effects on the market in and of itself, as far as whether it is provoked by some other condition in the market. I don't know, but at least it is certainly a significant event that we've been waiting for a long time. It's certainly been evident that the U.S. government is in on the manipulation and probably is the cover story for. I think that the major players acting through the big banks often get the government to adopt a certain policy in order to justify or permit exactly what they want to do. That is, the banks want to do. And so the fact that it's U.S. policy that gold or silver prices be low is I think oftentimes the case that it's really that the big banks want the price to be low because they're accumulating or something of the sort. And the cover story is that it's in order to strengthen the dollar. In any event, what else would you like to talk about today?
Well, I'll tell you, I was really shaken last night as I watched this. I'd heard of it before, but I never really saw clips from it. But the Jihadi Next Door, this documentary that was filmed in Britain over, I think, the course of a year. Are you familiar with that? I'm sure you have a topic that you want to address, and so we're happy to go right to that topic.
Well, I'm not familiar with that film. I haven't looked into it. I've been aware of the events reported from Britain. I'm also aware that there are reports that I think it was the Manchester event was at least a false flag, and some also indicate that it was a hoax. That is, at least in part, that the injured were, again, actors who were allowing it to be presented as a real situation to the public. Those are the kinds of things that have occurred in this country multiple times. And so it's not surprising that the British are involved in it. And it occurs at a time when there is another move to get the U.S. and its allies to enter more actively in the war, particularly in Syria, but in the Middle East, in order to take more power and leave less power to the so-called other side. So those are the kinds of things that occur at various levels of government when you have the kind of criminality that I first became involved in reporting about in our financial sector. I identified that criminality as coming from the higher authorities that control our financial markets in the U.S.
We used to call them the circle of greed.
And when you have that kind of criminality at one level, you can almost certainly find that it has also permeated every other major category of activity in the hierarchy of power. And you look at it, for example, in the FBI and in the NSA and the various other so-called misnamed intelligence agencies.
Right. Are you familiar with this this guy Trump has chosen to head up the FBI?
I was not familiar with him. I've looked a little bit at his background. I don't know. I had not seen his name before, and so I'd have to say I'm surprised about the selection. But I was hopeful that he might consider, although it hadn't been reported that he was considering him. There was a man by the name of Kallstrom, who was the former number 2 guy under Comey, and Kallstrom had resigned rather than continue to go along with the kind of conduct that Comey was perpetrating in that agency. But
it just seems to me like the best guy to head up the FBI is someone who's actually been an FBI agent, someone
yes,
who understands. What do you think, John?
Wayne, why do you think Trump didn't pick Kallstrom? I really was rooting for him. I thought he'd be the perfect guy.
Well, to tell you the truth, is probably for that reason, Kallstrom was never on the list of those being considered. I don't know why. He's certainly been prominent in the news.
Yeah, if anybody could sort that, I mean, listen, he'd whip that agency into top shape in no time. I mean, this guy's a no-nonsense character, and
I was hopeful that at least there was talk that the president was going to name an interim director, which could who could immediately take authority without approval of Congress, and on that basis, actually get some things done before they got into the political circus That
yeah, I'm kind of
undoubtedly
surprised
will.
that he didn't do that. That would have been a very smart idea, actually.
Yes.
But I mean, Colstrom's getting on a bit in the years, but I think this guy is a bit more dynamic because he's younger. But Colstrom is a very effective. He's got instant stature, this guy, and instant credibility
And I'm sure
and respect.
he knows where the bodies are buried and knows how to
Well,
dig
exactly.
them up.
I mean, if
and so
anybody
forth.
knows how to clean house, this guy is the perfect guy for it. No doubt about that.
And move things forward. On that,
I mean, can you believe this girl? The rottenness of this. I mean, how is his agency? First of all the problems are coming from these contractors. Just the same as Snowden was a contractor, to the NSA or where that he was working for. This girl is the same thing, and to be, it just shows you what kind of people are literally involved in these agencies, and they really need to be cleaned out very, very thoroughly and completely. They need to give lie detector tests and all kinds of things. That's how they fixed up the Border Patrol. The Border Patrol there was a lot of compromising of agents going on by the drug cartels, and now all these agents have to go through incredibly strict vetting, and they found a lot of people. They terminated a lot of people who were on drugs and who were lying and generally not ethical, and even unearthed some moles that were placed in by the drug cartels.
Well, one of the reports, or actually more than one, that I've seen regarding that so-called leak from the young woman is that the information she was leaking is actually a made-up story made up by the NSA in order to try to take down Trump. So it just goes on and on. This ridiculous situation we have in which the bad guys apparently have not been rousted out by the new president yet, and they still are in full bay trying to get him. But one of the stories that I think is important that is not getting much attention is the man by the name of Dennis Montgomery, I believe is his correct name, who is a whistleblower who left I believe it was the NSA, but certainly in the intelligence communities, left as a whistleblower and took with him 47 hard drives, which contains, it is stated that they contain 600 million documents, which I think puts even the WikiLeaks and the young man who is now in Russia, I can't call his name to mind this point. I think even he did not take that many documents, but these documents are of the nature which identify and document the very widespread use of intelligence surveillance technology to spy on millions of ordinary Americans, and particularly the ones that are more influential, are more outspoken, and so forth. I don't know whether there's a list out where you can check to see whether you've made the list, but they certainly included such people as the Supreme Court justices, many federal judges, other people in the government, Donald Trump as a private businessman, and this has been going on for years. And this whistleblower provided all these documents to James Comey early this year, and Comey had been covering them up right through the time that he was fired.
So he went through the proper channels.
The whistleblower, you mean?
This guy that you're talking about, as opposed to this young lady who did not go through the proper channels.
Right. The man who took this hard drive went through the proper procedures to be a whistleblower on it. Of course, I would certainly imagine that the actions he was taking in doing so would have dramatically put his life in danger. But somehow he was able to get legal counsel. He's represented, in fact, by the organization called Freedom Watch that was established by the founder of Judicial Watch, Larry Klayman. And Larry Klayman still represents him presently, as I understand it, as legal counsel. But this has had to go public in terms of at least the existence of the documents. To my knowledge, those documents have not been made available to the public, but it is proof positive that the upper reaches of our so-called intelligence community is violating criminal law, for what it's worth, passed by Congress, that prevents them from doing the kind of things that they are actually doing. And by all indications, the Obama administration was fully complicit in this, and most likely, as was James Comey, before the whistleblower brought the things to his attention. So in effect, Comey would have been in the position, most likely, and I'm speculating here, that he had been participating in this activity and knowledgeable about it, the spying and surveillance unlawfully of American citizens. And yet the whistleblower, at the risk of his own life, takes these hard drives, as a whistleblower then delivers them to, at least copies of them, to Comey, and Comey does nothing about them. And they finally, the whistleblower has to file a lawsuit against Comey, which he has now done, in order to call attention to the existence of this activity and the criminal activities that it amounts to.
So this will all come out in the testimony, or the schedule to start tomorrow, right?
Well, I believe there's testimony going on today.
Is there?
From the intelligence communities, and they could be asked about this presently. Are you doing this? I mean, what do you got to say about it, or something of the sort?
Mm-hmm.
But it's possible that somebody might ask Comey about it tomorrow in his testimony, which, of course, is actually scheduled and planned to be another way of attacking the conduct of the president in accusing that somehow there is collusion with the Russians in winning the election. Now, if you look into the Russian allegations and evidence at all, the evidence is very deep that those in the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton herself, Joe Biden, the vice president, were very deeply involved in financial activities with Russians. Whether it was the Russian government is a different thing, but when Hillary Clinton is greatly enriched by her approval of the sale of 20% of U.S. uranium deposits to Russian entities, it seems to me that amounts to collusion with some Russians, whether it's the Russian government or not. But criminality in every aspect of government regulation, government activities, government oversight. My goodness, if you look at the situation just in the audit of housing and urban development, I don't know whether we've mentioned the point before, but the new Secretary of Housing and Urban Development had obtained an audit and found something like 5.6 billion. No, I'm sorry, 560 billion. Billions of dollars, we'll put it that way, missing from the budget of housing and urban development, and it's not possible to.
It's hard to leave that in
like
your
that
other
or
pants.
misspend it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what else we want to talk about?
Well,
Do you have
Pete,
anything?
Pete commented from the audience that a large percentage of the people that they're hiring now as linguists and social media experts are in the 18 to 21-year-old age group, many just out of high school. And this 25-year-old girl who just leaked whatever it was that she leaked apparently was fluent in Arabic. So,
Well, interesting.
Yeah.
I
mean, has a lot of this stuff been going on forever, and now suddenly we've chosen to shine a spotlight on it?
Well, to me, it seems impossible that it could have been on as large a scale as it is now. It's so much just infected and taken over. It seems every activity of the government, even at some state levels, things are just out of control. But certainly the reporting that I did in my book about the Great Depression and the things that went on before 1929, how the Great Crash of 29 itself was a contrived and orchestrated crash that, again, as I've stated many times in the past, the crashes are the most profitable times for the financial players because they know how to sell short, and in that circumstance, their profits come much more quickly in the crash than they do in a steady rise of the economy. So they celebrate that, and among others, Joseph P. Kennedy, the most well-known manipulator of the markets back in the 20s, was said and reported at the time publicly to be smiling and sitting on top of the world on October 29th, the last day of the Great Crash, because he had been heavily shorting the markets the entire time, and selling back in at the top again and then riding them back down again on the short side. So in terms of how long this has gone, I think I've mentioned to your audience before that there was the best-selling book on economics ever written was actually self-published in 1880 and sold more than 2 million copies back in those days, between 1880 and 1900. And in that book, as well as so many other very well-written, well-presented ideas and information and concepts about how things actually work, the author, Progress and Poverty is the name of the book. I cover it in chapter 4 of my book in some detail, and that author reported in the latter part of that book that the facts, the reality that we actually have is that there's a very large pecuniary interest that controls governments from behind the scenes, and that they make laws and they cause government actions from behind the scenes in such a way that our elected government is controlled by them, and the activity we have as a democracy in pretending to write laws is only a facade that these great powers are really the controlling interests, and one day we'll have to address those things. Well, right now we are in exactly that kind of major fight. There are some of us that are still hopeful that the newly elected president is a champion for the productive people, not the ones behind the scenes, not the incredibly powerful and wealthy is not really even a term that applies. These are multi-century fortunes that have been multiplied with the help of technology and with secret powers that they are by no means the people that you see listed on the Forbes 400 or something of the sort. These are fortunes that are so large that they do not permit the publications to refer to them. They are measured in the trillions of dollars, and with properties that are unheard of in the extent that and the power that they provide these few families. And so in that circumstance, we as Americans, it seems to me, have to address ourselves to the point that our government is still as it was in 1880. By the way, that year was the same year in which a president was elected who was nominated in a so-called runaway convention of the Republican Party, and he was assassinated, actually shot twice, I believe, at a railroad station by a so-called lone assassin who just happened to have connections and communications with the senior senator from New York at the time. And it was because he intended and declared that he was going to take the finances of the U.S. government back from the people who had been controlling it. And so here we are. In 1980, we had another president that was thought to be of a mind to do such a thing, and he was shot, not killed. Reagan survived. We had one intending to do exactly that sort of thing, even though he was the son of Joseph P. Kennedy, the manipulator and mover and shaker in the corrupt government. John Kennedy apparently had a different nature and was going to make the changes, getting rid of the Federal Reserve, restoring us to honest money, getting rid of the CIA, breaking it in 1,000 pieces, and as a result, he was blown to pieces down in Dallas. I've even had a recent experience on Facebook, being invited into a group wanting that's so-called The Truth, JFK The Truth, to discuss information on that. And to my surprise, it seemed, as far as I could tell, that all the experts in that group, especially the highest rated experts, were those who were completely convinced that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. So we certainly have that kind of activity known to us and apparent in so many of the activities that we're involved in now. I'm sure that you're aware that Google and Facebook, Twitter, and so forth seem to be very much in the business of preventing any discussion of the murder of Seth Rich, the young man who is confirmed now, I believe, to be the leaker from the DNC who provided the emails of Hillary and Podesta to WikiLeaks that were then released to the public during the campaign and hurt Hillary Clinton's campaign so much by showing the kind of criminality involved in their activities. So, what other subject would you like to talk about?
Well, the only other thing I was going to bring up is the move that Amazon has made. They're going after Walmart and award a win over low-income shoppers. They announced yesterday that they are reducing the Prime membership rates for American shoppers who are on government assistance. Now, the Prime membership costs $99 a year or $10.99 a month, but now customers who have an electronic benefits transfer card will qualify for a reduced $5.99 monthly membership, which grants them unlimited free 2-day shipping and access to Prime video, music, reading, and photos. The discounted rate will be available to nearly 20% of the U.S. population, according to Morningstar. So I'm assuming that 20% of the U.S. population is on what they call SNAP. When I was growing up, it was called food stamps, but it's got a new name now. We designed this membership option for customers receiving government assistance to make our everyday selection and savings more accessible.
This is Amazon?
Right. Last year, nearly 1 out of every $5 spent using SNAP, or the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, was spent at Walmart, according to Morningstar. Prime memberships are poised to outnumber Costco memberships very soon. Now, according to Consumer Intelligence Research Partners estimates, there are roughly 80 million Amazon Prime members in the U.S. So that's 80 million people that are currently paying $99 a year. And that gives them access to basically the same thing as Netflix. The TV and video library that Amazon has it's probably not as deep as Netflix, but it's getting close. And also that qualifies them for the music and the photo thing. I don't know what that's about. Music and reading. I suppose you can get books online if you are a part of that. So they're really going after Walmart in a big way.
Well, that's interesting. Are they doing it in food as well as other merchandise?
Yeah, well, the Prime membership basically is for stuff that you order online and it gets delivered to your house. So no, to my knowledge, Amazon doesn't ship, well, they don't ship any kind of fresh food. I mean, I'm sure there are probably products that have a substantial shelf life, like you might be able to buy cornflakes or something of that nature.
Well, it's interesting. They certainly have been prominent in their attempt to use this drone-type delivery systems.
I haven't heard much about that lately. I don't know if if it's still on, if they're going to still attempt it. Member of our audience just said, I just canceled my Prime membership because of this. They should be out looking for a job instead of sitting at home watching Amazon Prime videos.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing that has been of concern, certainly for the last several years, in regard to Walmart, for example, is that with this Wall Street financing of Walmart and its growth and expansion across the country, it basically results in driving smaller players in the retail food supply out of business. In other words, small grocers and that sort of thing. And Walmart has become the source of food for a great many people in the country. And then if Walmart all of a sudden closes several hundred stores, the food supply for many people becomes practically non-existent or very limited because of the competition's already been destroyed. We don't have the setup for the smaller grocers that we once had.
Mm-hmm.
So the food thing is particularly important, but again, with Amazon, they just happen to be the darling of Wall Street, having a higher PE from the beginning, despite performance not being that red hot in many respects. And you can see that with Bezos buying the Wall Street or the Washington Post.
Right. That kind of took everybody by surprise.
Well, $250 million is just a cheap loss leader for public opinion, and to make sure that the Post stays in operation to be the mouthpiece for the shadow government. And I mean, the proof of the pudding of that, as I've stated previously, is that concurrently with buying the Washington Post for $250 million, he immediately gets a $600 million contract with the CIA to provide so-called printing services to the intelligence community. Well,
interesting.
That's another way of making sure that the press is bought and paid for and controlled, and that I think certainly goes for the Post as well as the New York Times and much of the major, what's called the mainstream media, is controlled in exactly that way, with payments to the so-called reporters from the intelligence community. So in any event, those are the things that are affecting the financial, the economic community, the investments we make, what's going to happen to our government, what's going to happen to the markets, what's going to happen to stock prices, the prices of gold and silver and commodities and so forth, whether the central banks owned by the Rothschilds are going to continue to dominate the world and the world's governments, or whether some headway can be made in ridding ourselves of those things. I've written pretty extensively about the manner in which the dollar and its so-called value is completely illusory. It is designed to ultimately become completely worthless. And when the dollar becomes completely worthless, what in the world does it mean that, for example, gold will be $10,000 an ounce? $10,000 an ounce means the dollar supposedly is worth a whole lot less than it is presently, at least in our imagination is worth presently. But if the dollar actually becomes so worthless that nobody is willing to take it for food or anything else, then 10,000 or 100,000 of them makes no difference per ounce of gold. It will simply be priceless and not available for sale in dollars. And we will be in a situation of having to completely retrench what we use as a monetary system. I've said previously, we need to make that change as quickly as possible before the last ounce of value for our work and our products is stolen from us. Let's move on to a monetary system that actually provides money of value rather than this illusory thing that allows for paper to be exchanged for all of our work and production. We've been off on a very, very wrong road since at least 1913, and the sooner we end it, the better.
Yeah, I agree. Couple comments from the audience here before we wrap up. Let me scroll up here. Pete said, watch for Amazon regular Prime membership to go up to subsidize the welfare members. If that happens, then we'll know that Amazon is the new government. There was sort of tongue-in-cheek there.
Well, I might mention to you before I go that the Seth Rich murder, it continues to fester with information. People are risking their lives to find out really what happened to him. Because it's such an important thing, there's so much evidence that trails right back to the DNC as being responsible for his death. For example, there's a report now that I'm sure I've mentioned this to you before, but he was shot twice in the back at 4:19 in the morning in an area of Washington D.C. that's supposedly relatively safe. The reason he was out at that time, I've said before, is that he was advised or believed that it was unsafe for him to go home. It was unsafe for him to go to his girlfriend's place. So he was staying out first in an all-night bar, not an all-night bar. It actually closed, I think, at 2 o'clock, and he had to leave then. And he was still not in a position to be able to go to his own place or to his girlfriend's place because he believed that somebody was trying to find him to kill him. But he was supposed to be meeting with the FBI that morning. And it happens that coincidentally, we'll say, in the same area of Washington as his murder occurred, an FBI car was reported as having been broken into and weapons taken from it, along with maybe a laptop or two. Now, I know that there is a law against that prevents any FBI agent from leaving any weapon in a car that's unattended. And yet, supposedly, an FBI car was broken into and one or more weapons taken. And that seems to coincide with the fact that the hospital had recovered one of the bullets that he was shot with from him, and a test on it indicated it was an FBI bullet. So he had thought that he was going to be meeting with FBI people, and yet supposedly he had been accosted by pretenders. That was one theory. but at the present time, it may turn out to be that the so-called break-in of the car and the taking of weapons might have been a cover story for the fact that it turned out to be an FBI bullet that killed Seth Rich, or at least was shot. He was shot with it. I think I told you when we spoke last that a surgeon who assisted in his treatment said that he had been treated and he was out of danger, and anticipated as fully surviving the attack before law enforcement officials. One report said the place was flooded with law enforcement officials and kept the doctors from attending to Rich again until after he was reported dead. And another report of that nature, again, I'm not sure, I can't attest to the accuracy of these, but another report indicated that it was 2 FBI officials who came in and kept the doctors from further attendance of Seth Rich. That report indicates that while they were in the room with Seth Rich, that a substance was put into his IV tube, and that he died of a heart attack as a result of that. Again, these are reports by people who are investigating. Obviously, they could be made up, but people are risking their lives trying to get to the bottom of this. And one of the aspects of it, I think I may have mentioned before also, is that the U.S. Attorney Office in Washington, D.C., as far as any federal involvement in this death of Seth Rich, it turns out that Debbie Wasserman Schultz's brother is the deputy U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C., and would have some authority over what is done by the U.S. Attorney's Office there and law enforcement, and thus would also have some influence, supposedly, in the hospital that treated Seth Rich. It seems like a terrible thing for us to be discussing this subject when, of all things, it is not discussed in the major media at all. And was the subject
that does become the elephant in the room, doesn't it?
It certainly seems to me to be. Well, I think I've taken your time, so
real quick. I don't know if you're. Can you see my screen right now?
Let me.
Well, I'll tell you what's on there.
Yes, I do. Yes.
Wayne from the audience says, "Is there a plan for a worldwide currency collapse to usher in the globalist Illuminati plan for a world currency? The Economist magazine, owned in part by the Rothschilds, may have revealed the timetable for this back in 1988. The cover shows 2018 as the date on the Bitcoin-looking currency around the neck of the phoenix that is rising out of the ashes of the fiat currencies of the world. Also, the number 30, 1988 plus 30 years equals 2018, has significant meaning."
Well, so I think that was certainly been their intention. I believe there are other governments of the world who don't plan to allow that to happen. I've talked about them some in the past. I think the BRICS alliance and those countries allied with them are certainly trying to work against that kind of a currency being put out again by the Rothschild banks. Those banks need to be nationalized. They need to be taken over and terminated and ended. We certainly have a big job to do in getting that done in the United States with the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a Rothschild bank. mean, for crying out loud, Congress has even given the Rothschild Bank in the United States complete regulatory authority over our entire financial system.
Right.
And you can see how far down the tubes we are. And this is, unfortunately, the deep state is very much present in those hearing rooms this morning, in the seats of the senators and others who are interrogating and spending their time wondering whether the Russians somehow influenced our election, when our election is so heavily rigged and manipulated by our own systems and our own shadow government. It's preposterous to look at a country overseas that has ridded itself of the Rothschild Bank by running them out of the country. We need to do the same. And you can see that that is one of the reasons that Russia is now being painted as the big enemy, the great Satan. And unfortunately, the great Satan are the ones running the Satanist pedophilia, human trafficking, the worst you can imagine.
Right.
That is very, very serious in this country. So I'll leave you with that.
These are troubled times.
Me.
So thank you so much, guys. Drop by classicalcapital.com. Grab a copy of Wayne's book, The Fruits of Graft, and once you've read it, go to Amazon and leave a review. And we'll talk to you next Wednesday, Wayne.
Thank you very much, Dwayne. Delighted to be with you.
Have a great week. Okie doke. I kind of walked us through pretty much everything that happened in the markets. We'll take a quick run through. But I've marked most of them up. The S&P, we did not have a trigger long or short. The Dow triggered long just enough to get you in trouble. Now, at the time, I said there was no short trigger, but we actually got one since then. And it was sell 21.20. And that dropped down to last week's zone almost, producing, all of 11 points. Just an incredibly range-bound market, and we have no control over that. Soybeans, they don't open until 8 p.m. We put out the report at 7 p.m. last night. We got them out at 1900 hours. So we actually, this is the opening of, see, this last candle here is 1400 hours, and then the next is 20. We sent the numbers out at 7 p.m. Eastern, and it was to consider buying 927. And soybeans ran up 7.5 cents at $50 per point. They pay just like the S&P, $50 per point, $12.50 per tick. Bonds, we suggested selling 154.21. First move down was good for 7 ticks at 31.25 per tick, and we have important prices, important areas, almost always tested, and we just did 7 a second time. And this time we might even head lower. That's a possibility. Yeah, we just did. Swing low is 12. So that's a 9-tick move so far at 31.25 per tick. Okay, and then on gold, This is another case of important prices, important areas, almost always being tested. The first drop was 150, then we got back above the trigger and dropped another 150, and then this would have resulted probably either in a walk away or stop outs, and this one here actually seems to have some meat on the bone. We dropped to 1286.70. So if we just round that up to 1287, that would be $500 per contract available. We never get out at the swing high or the swing low because we trail our stop. That means you'll always leave a little something on the table, and that's something that takes a little getting used to. The NQ triggered on the long side, 10.5 times $20 per point. We didn't trigger on the short side, and we just triggered again on the long side, and so far we ran up 6.5 points at $20 per point. 6.5. And crude oil, which really hit the skids today with those surprise numbers that came out. These are last week's zones. Let's find 1900. Okay, and on crude, let me drag this. I didn't drag this out so you can get a screenshot, anybody that wants one. Crude, we were looking to sell 47.40. And there's 47.40. So 47.40. However, big caveat, this happened in the 10:30 candle, and we always teach and preach to lay low ahead of major economic events. So this is, although we said 47.40 last night, the timing was not good, and so even though we dropped off all the way to 45.74, at 46.40, that's at 46.40 we're at $1,000 per contract. So this ran over $1,000 per contract on the inventory numbers. But again, that's when we would have set out, even though we put the number out last night. Okay, the last one, the one we haven't looked at yet, the Russell, 1900 hours. Oh, that's right, it doesn't open until 2000 as well. It's like the soybeans. And on the Russell, we were looking to be buyers at 1396. So you'd have probably been at 50 a point. You'd have probably been okay through here. When it finally rallied, it got up to a high of 1401. So it's about $250 per contract available. And on the sell side, $13.92, and we put in a swing low of $13.90.60. So rough day for the Russell. I know most of you don't trade the Russell anymore, but a few people still do, so that's why we still post the numbers on them. And that's going to do it for this Wednesday hump day, 7th day of June, 2017. Take a little break, get started on the afternoon shift, the mentoring sessions. As always, if you have any questions, call us at 949-42-EMINI or drop us a line, support@cfrn.net. Thanks so much for tuning in today on this quiet Wednesday. Whoever you are, wherever you are, may God continue to richly bless you with His mercy and with His grace. And I'll see you at the bell.
Remember this, there is no greater return on investment than to see a human life changed and given hope. As always, pray hard and trade safe. Any financial information discussed on this show is simply the opinion of our host, Dwayne Reeves, his co-hosts, and guests. To learn more about trading Emini Futures or to take a 1-week free trial in our live trading room, call 1-866-928-3310. 866-928-3310. Information discussed on this radio program should not be construed as a recommendation to buy or sell any security. Always do your own due diligence and consult with a licensed securities broker or financial planner before making any investment decision.